Hello, everyone. Hannah Levin here from Heartfelt Wellbeing. And here is our next inspirational interview. I want to remind you all that I'm going live using StreamYard. So if you would like to participate in the conversation, which I hope you will, if you can grant StreamYard permission for us to see your name, that will be very helpful. And I encourage you all to type questions into the chat or comments, and we'll have a lively conversation with our guest today, who is Adelle Martin. She's coming to us from the UK. You'll get to enjoy her beautiful accent, as well as her amazing knowledge that she has around the wisdom of menopause and keeping with women in business, whether that's in their actual entrepreneurship business or just in the business of our lives, keep us going through the menopausal years. So I'm really excited to learn from her today, as I'm sure you are. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on Adelle.
Hey,
Hello.
thank you. Hi, thank you.
Yes, I'm so excited to have you here today. So let's start with you just introducing yourself. Who are you and how
So,
did you come to do this work?
yeah. So I'm Adelle, and I came into menopause coaching 10 years ago. And that was due to my own personal journey. So I was just over the age of 40. So I had, as always, as we are at the moment, busy family life. I had a busy life in the boardroom and was also running a family business as well as volunteering and doing all that great stuff and trying to look after myself. I was trying to do all of the things that I've always set out doing. To be fair, I'd pretty much done that all of my life. I'd always been an active, busy person. So there wasn't anything different. But what I was finding was, as I was just going about my life, and things did get difficult. So it was around the time of the financial crisis here in the UK. And also my daughter was going into college. So there was just more things for me to think about than usual. But again, Adelle, I was always resilient. I always looked after myself. I always got back up again because that's just who I was. And I, always looked after myself. But do you know what? What was happening over a period, and in the end, it turned out about 18 months, the things that I'd always done to look after myself just didn't seem to be working anymore. And I just couldn't work out why. But the thing that really happened was I was starting to lose my confidence, or actually, because it's this change of confidence, because I've always been really confident, but I was stumbling over my words. I was walking into rooms and thinking, I don't know why I come in here. Why have I come in here? I've walked back out. And then my daughter goes, where are my trainers? I'm like, that's why I went into the room. Thought nothing of it. And then she goes to me, what's up with you? And you're like, and then your internal dialogue goes, is there anything up with me? No, I'll be fine. No, it's fine. I'm just busy. And that's one thing, doing that in family life. And then I had a work life where I was running a large team. And then I'm thinking, oh my God, what if I forget something now? What's going on? And then I was in the boardroom in a very male-dominated world, and they go, Dale, we can't understand you. What are you saying? So what happened is, over time, those little elements that people were saying to me, as well as I felt like, why were these? I felt really hot flushes were building up and building up. And then I got to the point where I really, really didn't understand what was going on with me. And then I started to feel unwell. And to be honest, then that's when I started to skip meals or not eat because I was too busy. And with everything that was going on, I had one particular really important session in the boardroom, and I truly forgot what I was going to say. And they said to me, what's happened to you? You used to be so talented. Is it because you're over 40 now? You're like, and I left, and I thought, actually, I don't feel very well. So in the end, I ended up collapsing. So I literally was taken off of my feet, went to my healthcare provider, who said to me, you've basically had a breakdown. It's all anxiety and depression. I'm like, no, I haven't, I'm not. Yes, it has felt like anxiety, but it wasn't that start of it. So I pushed back really hard because I didn't want to take an antidepressant. This wasn't the answer. I truly wanted to know. So I pushed for more blood works, more blood tests, had thyroid, everything checked. And then he sat down with me and said, we think we know what's happened. He said, your estrogen, your progesterone, all your hormones are pretty low. When was the last time you had a period? I went, I don't know, because they've always been erratic for the last few years. And he said, well, actually, your bloods have come back and you're post-menopausal. I went, really? This was 10 years ago. What does that mean? That's something my grandmother, I think, went through. It's not for me. And he said to me, well, it's taken a toll on your body. Then, you should consider leaving work or taking a lesser role. And I went, so you're telling me that I've got to choose between my body, my career and menopause? I said, no way, I'm not doing this. So I actually took 3 months off of work and went away and researched. Nobody at that time, it's better now, but then I couldn't find anything on what menopause was, what it did to my body. And so I went and found it all out for myself, because I was not going to give up. I was not going to give up on my busy life to surrender to this. So I went away, worked out what happened to me, and then found those solutions. But it was that what had happened. I completely lost myself. And what was more scary, I couldn't even, people said to me, you should have told me. I went, told me what? I didn't know.
Yeah.
And that was where, so when I went back to work, this is a funny bit. So instead of going back into a finance where I'd been my whole career in a very male dominated, I actually went back in here in the UK. We call it human resources. So I went into the HR department because I did not want another woman to go through what I did. So I then went back educating women, setting up workplace policies, and that is where my journey into coaching came. And then 2 years ago in January, and that was ahead of my 50th birthday, I decided to leave the corporate world and focus full time on coaching women. So that's a very quick story of where I've come from. And that was because I was broken by menopause with no idea why.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. It was literally the breakdown before the breakthrough that
it
led
was.
you to find more
Yeah.
purpose. Yeah. Can you tell us in your own words, how do you define menopause?
So for me, menopause, so for me, I always do science and stories because that, to me, that's really important. So from a science point of view, it's literally, and this is the key element, menopause is one night. So it's when you go into the 13th month without a period. So, in those terms, we're into month 13, 14, 15 with no period. That is actually post-menopause. So I call it Cinderella. Menopause is for that dong at midnight and then it's over with. But more importantly, for me, rather than just driving it like that from a transactional point of view, I want women to realise that estrogen, our queen and our protector, that I call her, she starts to exit and decline. And that is where the fun starts. So for me, menopause is one moment in time, but we need to think about how we look at ourselves before in peri, how we deal with the 1 minute to midnight, because that's all that it really is. But more importantly, how do we look after ourselves from a post-menopausal body all the way through to like my wonderful mum who's 75. So that is the science of menopause. And then the stories is, for me, I truly called it my spiritual awakening, because as I did have my breakdown, I stumbled across Brené Brown. And I watched that. I was like, that's me. That is so me in that TED clip when she's like, I don't do this. I don't do therapy. I don't do this. I don't do this. That is so me. I can honestly say, and I know we were talking at the beginning and it lit me up, because I truly moved into air and space, and I cannot. And that is the story, the spiritual side of me. And I just grew. I finally grew into my body. So when people say to me, oh, Adelle, if I work with you, will you get me back to my 20-year-old? I went, oh, no, we don't want to go there. We want to go forward. I can honestly say, so for me, there's the science of it. But for me, it's the stories, it's the spiritual. And the more that I work with women, we actually like this space. It's a little bit scary some days to get there. And then also it's having that. So for me, that's what menopause and post-menopause has meant to me. So there's always those two angles to it for me.
Yeah. Yeah, so important. Yeah, and for those of you that are watching, and feel free to chime in. There's several of you here if you have questions or insights, comments from the conversation. So yeah, from an Ayurvedic perspective, when we look at leading up to menopause, and I agree, there hasn't been. I mean, I'm only 43 at this point, but I have an awareness of like what I'm doing now will affect how I go through menopause, and there's that wisdom from the Ayurvedic perspective of how you live out the decade beforehand is really how things will go down. Kind of the reckoning
Absolutely.
of that shift between pitta stage, so fire and water dominated, of your
Mm.
early adulthood, and then shifting into vata stage, predominant with
Mm.
air and space. And so that energy, we were talking about this beforehand, but just to review for those of you here, that energy from the early pitta stage of life, like if we could say 20 years old to 50 years old, is downward moving energy. You're connecting with your home, you're building your life, your community, your identity, and you're birthing babies and you're bleeding and downward. And then you go through menopause and it opens up this upward moving energy, which creates a lot more expansion. And when we can bring that perspective to the larger world, it's wisdom. And so when we can continue to be in positions of influence, or showing up in the world powerfully, there's a lot of wisdom we can bring there. So I love that this aligns with what you're talking about. So one of the things that you were sharing about was like this question of like, do we all go through menopause?
Yeah, absolutely.
Does it skip some people?
Well, women would like to think so. So
Yeah.
the answer is, and I say to women all the time, it's not optional. Do you want to lean into it, understand your body? Because if you ignore it to your peril, and exactly what you said when you just said it there, you have to look after your future self. So, but with me, so where that conversation comes from, unfortunately, as much as I'm a very inward spiritual person, we have to look in this outside world. And you've only got to go on your Instagram feed for this age group, and you see what marketing is fed to us. Okay. And also a lot of women, have grown up through, I dare say it, and I don't want to use trademark, the Weight Watchers culture of mentality. So we have got a really difficult relationship with food when I work with women. So therefore, by them facing into this, they go, it's aging. So there's that real connection about how I look and aging, how am I getting old? So you get all of these mixed up, feelings of menopause. And I say to women, look, just give me a moment. Let me unpack that for you, because the first thing, it's not optional. So we will go through it. And there really is an easier way or a hard way, but we are going to age. And the more you understand those 40 changes, and when we go, oh, well, I'll be fine over my hot flush and it'll be okay. Because again, from a marketing point of view, it's hot flushes, mood swings and sleepless night. Actually, the other ones that are really important are under the iceberg. It's where the danger is. And that is things like your brain health, your heart health, your bone density, your muscle loss, and then losing your frame and your focus and your strength. Then the weight gain goes on because your body, there's nothing of you, and all of those things. So there's that science element that women have to face into. So I find sometimes women just immediately think of what they've come through on their Instagram feed, their marketing, and go, it's not for me. I'm going to do this. I'm fine. And for me, it's just sharing that knowledge. And once I talk to them, they go, okay, yeah, I start to understand. So for me, it's the reason why they go, oh, it's not going to affect me. It's because they're basically saying, I don't want to get old. And so for me, there is a lot. And it's not until I sit back and through what I grew up through and what I was faced, even without social media, because I'm 51 now. So I grew a lot of that, and yet I still felt it. And watching and listening, and I watched my daughter at 24 and my mum at 75. So I've got two ends of the spectrum, and the conversations is around what does that feed you? And it's making sure that, like you said, you step into your power and make sure that we help women with, I'm passionate about correct information and not marketing material, because it's quite different. So that's why a lot of women say to me, oh, I didn't go through it. No, you did. We all do.
Yeah, it's really, really powerful. Yeah, and I like that you talk about the importance of diet. Like one of the things that I see a lot is that people say, well, I've always done that. Whether
Yes.
it's eat a certain thing or exercise a certain way or whatever. And that part of the adventure of living a life is that things continue to change. And as we change, specifically during, it's called the change, right? You call it that in,
yes, we do the change.
right? Yeah. So
Yes.
it's the change, and to step back and re-examine, how do things need to change? How are you nourishing yourself? How are you moving your body? How are you relating to other people, right? Relationships are part of this too. And and kind of stepping up to meet yourself in your new form
Yeah.
is really powerful. Will you talk a little bit about what your thoughts are in terms of like diet and lifestyle shifts that people
Yeah.
aren't generally aware of?
Yeah, absolutely, I will. Because it's again, people say to me, "Oh, so you found so you found like healthy well-being because of menopause?" No, from the age of 2, I was a dancer and a gymnast. I was fed nutrition. I studied
Mm,
an element of sports science. You know, I I was feeding my body what I thought at that time was correct. You know, so you know, I'd been marathon runner, gymnast, all those sorts of things. So I was always into healthy eating. But you hit the nail on, you hit it perfectly when you said what got you here won't get you there.
right.
And that was the challenge that I had. And that was why I thought to myself, yes. And there's one thing when we talk about food in a minute, there was one element that I realized I had a propensity for, and that started when my period started, and there's a story in there. But actually, apart from that one element, and it was that one element that pushed me down in the boardroom, I'd always been healthy. Now, the difference that I realized by going through the food is I needed to change. And that was why I took 3 months sabbatical. I love experiments. I am a walking experiment. Okay. So I think about, I've changed the way that I eat. So from a food point of view, I've changed my foods. I've certainly, so in the bottom, under my system, I've got 4 boxes, and the bottom left is body. It's all about feeling stronger, and it's food, move and snooze, because it's easy to understand. So I literally completely changed the way I ate, but not what I ate, but when and how I ate. Now that is what you won't always pick up from a nutrition point of view. And then
That's a
move.
lot of what I teach.
Yeah, it's so
When and
honestly,
how.
but
Yeah.
when you get the when and the how, you know, honestly, it's so interesting, especially around circadian rhythm and your
Yes.
body and all of this great stuff that women go, oh my God, I've never really, you know, so it's all new to women because it's not taught mainstream, and that's the
Right.
challenge that we have. And then under movement, I completely changed the way I move. And then sleep and calm, I completely changed the way I did that. So again, so in terms of that bottom left, it's all about the body. So for me, around food is around some of the things that my body needed, it didn't need anymore. And the one thing it certainly didn't need any more of was sugar. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, there's a lot of noise around sugar, but I can categorically say from me and the women I work with, sugar was my downfall from the day I started my periods, because I realized over time. And then when I had my daughter, a second hormonal change with postnatal depression that I had
Mm.
sugar. So it wasn't till I had my menopause and I sat literally in the university with this big paper going, how did I get here? I unpicked all the way back from period. So I looked at myself from period to post-menopause, and I realized what sugar had done to me. And then
Mm.
the sugar element had then, from my brain point of view, it scrambles my brain. It still does. It is nowhere near in my diet. And when I looked at the last set of behaviours before I had literally my meltdown in the boardroom, I was eating sweets, to survive, to get through the day.
It's
So
quick
I was,
energy.
yeah, and I realised the damage that I was doing, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been studying this all my life. But when you are on your knees, yeah, that was what I'd gone through. So that was the first thing that I realised that I'd always need. It's always been out of my diet, but it crept in at the last minute because I just truly didn't know how to get through the day. So it was that element. And then I had to get on a plane from that meeting. And I went into the airport lounge and I bought 4 big family size of candy, and I ate the lot.
Oh
And
my goodness.
it was that pushed my body into meltdown. Yeah, I was just, to talk about a sugar rush. It was beyond a sugar rush, and that's why I ended up in hospital, because basically I'd had enough. So from that food point of view, I knew that it was a no-brainer. I knew that one had to come out, but then I had to think about things like fats and avocados, because we'd gone through the whole life of women being scared of fats because we've been in this low fat culture. So for me, it was bringing back all of the nurturing foods. But exactly, I laughed. I was your typical pitter, warm, fiery, going for it person. And those foods that I was eating was really aggravating my body. So again, I changed those foods so it fitted more with where I was going. And then also meal timings. The amount of women I talk to that either skip meals, so they go for long periods of time, or they eat very close together. The one thing I do a huge amount of research on constantly is our digestive system, and also the mind-gut loop. And estrogen is far more predominant in our digestive systems, I think even the scientists realise, because women like us are saying, this is what's happening to us. So, I realised from our digestive system what I was doing to it. So even when I say to women, people say we are what we eat. We're not. We are what we absorb. We're not what we eat. If you can eat, I was eating the healthiest of foods, but pushing it through this system so quickly that couldn't cope because I had no estrogen. I wasn't absorbing anything. So we aren't what we eat. We're what we absorb. And women are like, oh my God, I never really thought of it like that. So there's this whole element, and then going with our circadian rhythm and how we are meant to be. And the funniest thing is, when I clean up my diet, which is pretty clean now, but when I clean up other women's diets, I go, oh my God, I can listen to my body. I said, yes, there's a difference between hunger, because I've got them doing some weight training and doing some, lunges, versus hunger because somebody's upset you and you've triggered your cortisol. And they went, Adelle, and tired. There's two types of tired, yeah. And oh my God, I didn't, so you're teaching women to trust and listen to their body. And I said, if you do this right, you don't need an alarm clock to get up in the morning. Oh, no, I do. I sleep through my alarm.
Nope.
And then they go to me, Adelle, you were right. Really? Great. Yes, I don't need an alarm clock to go to bed or wake up, because I on most days, because, but from a circadian rhythm, I'm like, oh my God, Adelle, I can truly, and teaching women to lean into their body, but also about, taking some of these foods out, because it's white noise. You can't listen to your body if it's not. And those women work through that. So for me, that's why food is the very first thing I work with. In the bottom left-hand corner is food. And then we talk around movement. So again, a culture of spending hours and hours on treadmills, and they're basically eating your muscle away. Because not only were these women not eating protein and good quality fats, they were living on lots of ready meals and pasta, and then running on treadmills, and they were basically, no muscle was being built at all. So they were losing their frame. They weren't eating the right foods for bone density and growth and repair, etc. So again, we took away hours and hours in the treadmill. We do strength training, lifting those dumbbells, building this structure. And it is about looking good, but it's also building that frame. And then we talk about the 4 S's: strength training, steps. I do steps. I don't run miles anymore. I can't do it. My body won't take it. And the other one is stretching, which is the yoga element of it, and working. And the last one is shimmy, because I love the power of dance, and you probably know that through history. And so the 4 S's, and then when we go, oh, I really quite like this. And then the last one is snooze. And like you said, getting them, if we get the food and the move right, and then just having some calm. And when we go, I can't meditate, I haven't got time. And I go, look, you need to find what meditation is for you, because I am still a high energy. Although I'm into where I am, I'm still high energy. I know what I am. So for me, it comes at the weekend when I don't have any coaching or connections, then yes, I will meditate a lot longer. But during the day, I love to walk and meditate when I'm walking. So I feel like I'm moving and I'm outside, because that's where I get that energy from. But when we go, I just haven't got time. So again, it's just showing them like their brain and the tabs on that phone. And it's not until you sit back and I realise how wired and tired I was, just that last 14 months, I was walking around like a wired and tired smartphone, I just didn't know. And then all of a sudden I gave up. So it's those nuances. And that's where I educate women, because if you go mainstream in your Instagram feed, they're promising you a tablet or a 30-day diet plan that's going to, it's just not fair. And it's not, and I get really cross, because with I say to these women, there is no quick fix. Okay. And it's educating women to invest in their future selves. Like you said, I will help women to get control today, build that strength, build this body that they will grow into. But the boring bit of Adelle, the scientist and the carer, I'm investing in their body. So in 20 years' time, they can still walk they can still enjoy time, their mobility, their joints, and etc., and their brains, and you know, all of those things that we need. Unfortunately, sometimes, you know, it's about what can I do today. So I tell them what they can do. So tell us what you can do today, and then look after tomorrow. So for me, that's why, you know, I talk about those food, the move, and the snooze in that bottom left, and it is really getting that fundamental. And let's not talk about losing weight or getting back to where we are. I don't do. Let's move forward. So the bottom left is the body. It's all about feeling stronger with all of those food principles that I've spoken through. That type of training. Strength training is so important, and then sleep. As tough as it is, that's where the repair happens. You can't, and this is the difference with the weight loss. So when women, or they talk about the bodies is not doing what they want it to do, and then I look at how they're sleeping and the quality of it, and you can have I've done it. You can have the best food in the world, you can have the best movement plan, but if you don't sleep, your body can't do its stuff. It cannot look after itself while you're moving around. And I've experimented on what that element is, and the calm. All the time we are in a stressful position, then our body will do nothing but hold on to everything. And again, this is a really key point, and what women sometimes don't realize is when we trigger this process, probably about 39, our hormones start to decline. So they will start to decline. That in itself is a stressful process, because your body is going through change. And it doesn't get there overnight. You know, it's not one night only. So as you go down, even when you wake up in the morning, you're going to be +1 for stress. Okay, even if you are really, really, you know, you think I'm in a really good space, I'm not stressful, the fact that your body is going through change is going to be +1. So if you get up late in the morning, okay, you don't eat properly, you drive somebody out, and somebody cuts you up in the traffic, can you see? I say to women, you're creating, and when you get to that certain level, what happens with our hormones is then they start to fluctuate, so they go up and down. And then that is what triggers the hot flushes and the mood swings and everything else. So actually, you make your menopause symptoms worse by adding additional stress. And as you know, the longer we stayed in stress, it becomes chronic stress. And then that in itself will create all your joint problems. So sometimes women create the perfect storm. And as I say to ladies, we go through that decline. And anyway, the fluctuation starts where estrogen goes, no, I could be on the 11th month. No, I've changed my mind. I'm going to have a bleed. They're not going to go through it. So you're sort of back again. And I say to women, are you going to glide this in on a surfboard gently, or are you going to go in a tsunami? Because that's the bit where you have to take responsibility to know that you've got to do as much as you can to take the stress out. So if you're not eating properly, you're not moving properly, and you're not sleeping properly, then, you know, and that is before you've even spoken. And before you've even spoken to anybody for the day, you know, and interacted. So there's all of those elements, and it's just explaining to women what that science looks like, what do those stories look like, how this new version of you is coming. But actually, that change does need some responsibility, and really working and thinking about the way that you do those. And again, the way that I share it with women, and then when they start to see the results, and which is, you know, it's so interesting, because they might talk around sort of, you know, wanting to lose weight or feel more in control. And then what they come back to me is with, actually, Adelle, I really feel stronger, but I really know my body. I don't need an alarm clock to get up. And I know what hunger truly feels like. And I do know what tired feels like. So those are amazing feedback that I watch out for. And when I start to hear those words, then I know the women have turned a corner.
Yeah, it's powerful. That's so aligned with what I teach in Ayurveda too. It's really cool. So we're almost at the end of our time.
Sorry, and, honestly, I could talk for days.
I know, we get going. We're like, oh, that's so exciting. Well, there were two more things that I wanted to ask you about. And if you wanted to touch on either or neither or one, you're welcome to. But one is for those of us that are in our 40s or maybe even 30s, what are your top tips for being aware of, so menopause doesn't just sneak up on us? What would you recommend? And then my other question was, I was curious about your views on hormone replacement therapy.
Excellent. So in terms of when you're heading into your 40s, I would definitely, I have a list of 40 things. I want women to understand what the 40 things are, because sometimes they're things like electric shocks and heart palpitations that you may not even realize. It doesn't always start off with the obvious. So understand how your body is going to change in those 40
Is
ways.
there a resource that we could
Yes.
share those 40 things?
Yeah, I've got
Okay.
one, so I can share that resource. And I want
Okay.
women to understand what they are. And then
Yeah.
beyond that, it would be, for me, it would be really think about your food. And then from a training point of view, it's definitely do not be scared of protein and do not be scared of strength training, would be those starters. And then that would be the main takeaways, is understand those 40 things, how they're going to come, and
So
then
we can
start
see the signs.
Yes. Yeah. And so it's not too late. I didn't know you can't manage what you don't understand. So,
right.
So would be my big tip.
Okay. And then hormone replacement therapy.
Yes. So again, very interesting in that one. So as I was growing up, it would be like a diet pill to have a quick, like, try and lose weight quickly before a holiday. So with hormone replacement treatment, whether that be through natural supplements or through patches or gels or whatever, because it comes in natural supplements and from healthcare providers, the biggest misconception is you cannot HIT your way out of a poor diet, no movement and no sleep. So I get women go to me, oh, I don't need you, Adelle, because I've got HRT or I've got a supplement. No, you can't supplement your way out of this. So for me, it's level one. Everything that you teach, everything that I teach is level one self-care. Okay. Yeah. What your level two is, whether it be a Vedic, whether it be HRT, whether it be all of the supplements that the world is throwing at us, you can't do any of that without level one. And then from that, it's your choice. I personally, because of being so young and my bone density was rapid I've chosen to supplement with a bit more estrogen because I'd started this process at 40. I'm 11 years in, but you cannot supplement your way out of this process. Absolutely no way. Women say to me, oh, I'll use HRT, and then that means I can still do X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Can't. You
cannot it's not the pill of youth or the
no, if it was, no, it isn't. It absolutely isn't. And for me, it's that education piece, that there is no quick fix to this process. The best way is I'm educating my daughter, and I do work with 20-year-old, and I educate my daughter how to build a body for the future. And unfortunately, sometimes it's when people look at investments and pensions, it's what's my return tomorrow? No, you look after yourself, because you will get like my mum at 75. Oh my God, she can shoulder press and do all great things, and she looks after all of us still. So for me, it's you have to have that investment. And sometimes, like HRT, you can't supplement your way out of it. We have to really be strong and turn our back sometimes on marketing and go, actually, I know what I'm doing. But yeah, so that's my view on any supplements you take. It's not instead of the things that we've spoken about today. Absolutely not. It can help you, but only if you've got level one in place.
Yeah. And it's slow medicine, right? Like changing your diet, changing your exercise, changing your sleep patterns. It's not take a pill and everything changes. It's slow transition over time that then benefits you for the rest of your life. Right?
Yeah, absolutely. So, look, and what I say to women, look after your future self. So I look after my day, but I look forward to Adelle in 20 years' time, when I'm going to be on my island, on my beach, still surfing. And I say to women, I'm not going to be in a care home because of osteoporosis, hip fractures, or dementia. It's not going to be me. So I'm making a choice. So for me, it's educating women on those choices, but you have to play the long game.
Right. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here, Adelle. It's been wonderful to talk with you, and I know everybody's gotten a lot out of what you've shared today. So we'll post your website with this interview, and and if you have that resource for the 40 telltale signs of menopause, or whatever you call it, that would be great. We can share that as well. Any last words of wisdom you want to share before we end?
It is invest in your future self is what I would say to all the
Great.
women.
I agree. Cheers to that. Well, thank you so much and take care.
Thank you.
Mhm.